This is The Roadshow, and I'm your host, David Warren. Well, it's that time of year again, time to put on a sweater and time to talk about the oldest continuously published periodical in North America. You guessed it, the Old Farmer's Almanac. Back with us again is Janice Stillman, our friend. She's the 13th editor of the Almanac since it began back in 1792. Well, the new 2022 edition of the OFA is now available, and as expected, we'll give you a full roadshow review. Let's welcome back our friend, Janice Stillman. Janice, I am so excited about hearing your New England accent once again.
Oh, don't rub it in. But I just want to say that I can't believe it's been a year already since we last spoke. It seems like only a few weeks ago. But it is great to hear your voice again, and I'm happy to be with you.
Well, thank you. You are in Dublin, New Hampshire, and I think you hail from Boston. Is that correct? Boston, Massachusetts? Is that where you're from?
Very close, yes. Yeah. I'd like to invite your listeners, while I think of it, to go to our website, almanac.com, and scroll down a little bit and click on the webcam. You can't miss it there. There's actually two of them. One that shows the back side of the building with the lawn and the garden, but of course that's almost faded now. But the first picture is of the barn red buildings that are our offices here in Dublin, New Hampshire. But you'll also see, and this is the interesting part, you'll see the leaves starting to turn color here in Dublin. You'll see the snow fly. Sooner or later, you'll see us slipping and sliding in the parking lot, hopefully carefully. But, it's a good way to keep in touch with us here, really on a year-round basis. The camera is always on.
I love that. So how has this past year been for you? 2021, how would you sum it up at the Almanac?
Well, of course, we've been back to work here now since last summer, I guess. It's been quite a while, maybe this summer. I can't even remember.
I know.
Everybody talks about 2020 being such a lost period. But, we keep keeping on. We've got a Vegetable Gardener's Handbook out a couple of years now that people are loving because there are so many more people gardening. Our calendars and the Almanac are selling like never before. We've got a Flower Gardener's Handbook coming. So we keep busy here. And, it's looking out the window, you wouldn't think there was anything changed in the world because it's just really peaceful and pleasant and nature keeps on the way we expect it to. But, we're just all happy to be here. And, when you talk about it being the 230th year, the Old Farmer's Almanac, that alone is kind of hard to believe. But here we are.
And how many of those 230 have you been there at the Almanac for? A lot.
It's like telling my age. I'm going into 21.
Okay.
So I never honestly thought I'd be at any job this long, but it's been a great opportunity. I mean, it's an American icon. People love the Old Farmer's Almanac. We hear from folks from around the country and Canada on a regular basis, really, through the many channels between the website and the Internet and, of course, snail mail. But it's just been a delightful opportunity to have this job, and I'll keep at it so long as I can.
I was going to say that anybody who's been wherever for more than 20 years obviously loves what he or she does, and that would be you as well. Okay, Janice, it's been a whole year since we've talked about the Old Farmer's Almanac, so let's do a little review for our listeners, the pertinent information. Tell us why this periodical was created 230 years ago, back in 1792.
Oh, you bet. It was founded by the fellow on the cover, Robert B. Thomas. He's on the right, and Benjamin Franklin is on the left. Franklin is there because he's the father of almanacs. He was not an assistant to Robert B. Thomas in any fashion. But Robert B. Thomas grew up on a farm in western Massachusetts, and, of course, back in 1792, just about everybody lived on a farm, grew their food, kept their animals. There were no roads per se. I mean, it was all pathways and no radio, no Internet, and people needed to know what the length of day was going to be, for example, when the sun rose and set, what the moon phases were, because so many beliefs and practices were based on moon phases, and, just a bit of entertainment. Most people at the time had two books at home. One was a Bible and one was an almanac, and there were numerous farmers' almanacs around in those days. And I should remind people these were pamphlets by comparison to today's almanac. They were, on average, about 46 pages. So Robert B. Thomas, having grown up on the farm, like I say, always loved astronomy and decided that he was going to create his own farmer's almanac because he found the ones that were available to him as a young man were really not that entertaining and perhaps not even that helpful. So he decided he wanted to put out an almanac that was useful with a pleasant degree of humor. So he introduced anecdotes. He kept it full of a lot of important reference material, like the distance between places, because, as I say, there were no maps, there were no roadways. He gave all the proper astronomical information, such as the time the sun rose and the time it set, so people working the firm would know how long their day was going to be. He gave the vacation times for the major schools at that time, which were Dartmouth University and Harvard University. It was important for people who read the almanac to know when students were going to be available to come home and work the farms, for example. So there was an interest table in the almanac because, of course, people had to calculate how much to pay the help and, in fact, be paid for their supplies and their harvesting, their produce and whatnot. So it was really almost a computer in its own way, at that time, just as a 46-page pamphlet. So he produced 3,000 of them and sold out and never looked back and was the editor until he was age 80 when he died reading proof pages, we're told.
I guess it was the original laptop, Janice.
Yes, you'd put it on the lap, and there you go.
Oh, somebody here in the hallway at Oasis asked me, tongue-in-cheek, "Oh, you're doing the Old Farmer's Almanac. Is there a new Farmer's Almanac?" I did not laugh at that, but are there other almanacs that try to do what you all do?
Well, there are, and there always have been. As I say, even when Robert B. Thomas put his together. Most of them these days are regional. There might be one or two that attempt to be national. But I just invite your listeners and our friends to take a look at what the other ones are, what they have in them. And invariably, we hear from folks sometime in the course of the year, and they say, you've left this out, or you've left that out, or you changed something. I can't find, maybe it's the weather isn't quite what they expected it to be in terms of whether it's the treatment or the actual forecast. And the first question we ask people is, did you get the almanac with the yellow cover? Mm-hmm. Because that's really the best sign to know that you've got the Old Farmer's Almanac. The others are out there. We wish them well. But as I say, in most cases, folks find them just not really fulfilling their expectation for what to find in a proper Farmer's Almanac.
So to have the official Old Farmer's Almanac, in this case for 2022, you'll see Benjamin Franklin on the left and the founder Robert B. Thomas on the right. It's yellow and has a nice kind of old-fashioned drawing on it. And I always used to say, look for the hole up in the top left corner, but I ordered my copy of the 2022 Almanac from Amazon, and so I have a different edition. Mine looks like it's about 5 inches wide, 8 inches long, and it's shiny and a thicker cover. So what kind of a edition do I have here?
Thank you for bringing that up, because we do hear from folks when they get their almanac from Amazon, and we love Amazon. It's a great way to buy so many things. But we sell what we call the soft cover edition with Amazon, and it does not have a hole, because in addition to the stronger cover you've got on that, you've got whiter paper, thicker, whiter paper. It's easier to read, and the colors certainly stand out nicely on it. But it's just too thick for the punch machine to get through. And to get the one with the hole, you have to buy it in something like a Lowe's or a Walmart or a grocery store. So many of the places we sell what we call the newsstand edition. So you don't have the newsprint edition in the Amazon copy, and it's a few cents more. I think it's about $9.95, maybe a little less, of course, on Amazon. But we do several editions. We do a newsstand with the hole, which is available in our displays. We do a bookstore edition, which we sell through Barnes & Noble and a number of other bookstores, and that also has a hole and it has newsprint in it. We do the version you talked about on Amazon. It's available in a few other places as well, with the whiter paper and the firmer cover, so to speak, and no hole. And then we do a hardcover edition, which is also available in bookstores and here at almanac.com. It's really an attempt to meet people where they are in terms of price and frankly, maybe what they like to read in terms of the one you've got is what we call our large print edition, so to speak. It's slightly larger than the newspaper print and, of course, a little easier to read because the paper is so crisp. And you have all these in your store on almanac.com that people can pick their favorite type of almanac, different edition. Exactly right, okay. Yes. Okay, well, Janice Stillman is with us again this year. She is the 13th editor since 1792 and the first female editor, going strong at 21 years there at the Almanac. I'm David Warren, your happy host, and so
enjoying my time with Janice once again, as this is an Oasis Roadshow tradition. When we come back, we will be doing our annual flip through, which are the predicted trends for 2022. So we'll be back right after this. I'm David Warren, here with some exciting news for Oasis listeners. We have a new mobile device app. It's free, easy to download, and lets you enjoy our refreshing music and talk everywhere you go. If you have an Android cell phone, go to the Google Play Store. And if you have an iPhone or iPad, visit the Apple Store and search for Oasis Radio Network. Be an Oasis ambassador and share this news with family and friends around the world. It's Almanac Day on the Roadshow. That's the Old Farmer's Almanac. For more information, you can go to almanac.com, or you can even call a toll-free number, 1-800-ALMANAC. I'm David Warren, your host, and joining us once again, it's our friend Janice Stillman. So let's talk about what we can look forward to in 2022. We'll be talking about trends now for the year, and we will start where we need to start, and that is on the farm. And here's the buzzword, everybody: farmfluencer. Farmfluencer. That is a farmer who promotes the farming lifestyle. I'm all for that. Janice, tell us, what will our farms look like in 2022?
Oh, this is always so fun, the trend section through the All Farmers Almanac. So we're going to see farmers and ranchers renting out livestock to families to teach children responsibility, but also to other farmers to try before buying, so they can sort of practice raising stock. And another big thing is ranchers and farmers will be inviting volunteers to do farm chores for their own fitness. So instead of doing exercises, go out there and, just work the farm.
Good idea.
We're seeing neighbors joining to convert a portion of their land to bee habitats. And here's another thing you may be hearing about in some city environments is vertical farms growing hydroponically, aquaponically, which is to say with fish, and in greenhouses all over some city areas.
All right, over on page 8, let's talk about our gardens for 2022.
Well, there are a number of new varieties coming through, and of course there are every year. The growers, the breeders are always trying to find something that's more disease-resistant, easier to grow, and just more satisfying. We're seeing now disease-resistant red butterhead lettuce, sweet bite-sized hybrid Brussels sprouts, purple cauliflower. Colored cauliflower has been fun for a couple of years, and blueprints hybrid pumpkins, and I think that means it'll be a blue shade. So look for something different for Halloween next year.
I thought this was cool that gardeners are planting in stripes, 1 row vegetables, 1 row flowers. I think that's a cool idea, Janice.
Well, it's also to help pollination. It is a great idea, and it just gets the insects, the bees and the bugs and different things closer to the vegetable plants so they can pollinate them and hopefully increase the harvest.
Over here on page 10, I like this tiny is tops in the middle. Read us a little of that, if you would.
Well, as new gardeners learn the ropes, tiny plants that grow faster are all the rage. And a lot of this has to do with space. So many people have smaller spaces, whether they're growing indoors on the windowsill or even on the rooftop. Maybe a small space in the garden, but everybody wants small and fast-growing. Nobody has really patience. This was kind of a theme that started to show up last year, is the idea of being impatient for things to grow. But we're seeing multi-season smaller solutions like Autumn Starburst and Autumn Majesty dwarf azaleas that flower across 3 seasons, and Little Miss Figgy, a fig tree which bears figs in spring and fall. So all kinds of new plants coming, which is great fun, and lots of variety out there for folks to try.
All right, now let's talk about eating these plants. And over here on page 14, part of Good Eats, serving up success, restaurant chefs are meeting customers' needs. Tell us how they're doing so.
Off-site, yes. By setting up curbside pop-ups in high-traffic locations, chefs are getting out really into the population. Chefs are setting up virtually by teaching how to make favorite dishes online, and they're helping people at home by providing music playlists and plating instructions for takeout meals to replicate the ambiance of the restaurant where they were made. So chefs are really trying to help people out and give you the full experience. I like this, though, where the flavors we're craving are, get this, maple syrup with edible glitter, and oat milk powder. That is, after the oats are pressed for milk, they're selling the powder now. And then if you really like fish, the vacuum-fried salmon skins left over from the fish that are filleted are really a growing trend as well. You're going to see those in the supermarkets.
I'll need to be hungry to partake of that, Janice. I love this food on the move. Mobile grocery stores and trucks visit neighborhoods this coming year, and shoppers stroll through trailer aisles. Trucks are then restocked before heading to the next location. Also, groceries in temperature-controlled boxes are delivered to homes at any time without worry about food spoilage. And finally, restaurant kitchens built for takeout orders are occupying former retail spaces and parking lots. So food is coming to us. I love that.
Oh, I know. So many things are changing. You know, delivery was a big deal a few years ago, and look at it, the grocery store's coming to you in truck form. So it's really pretty terrific.
Okay, on page 16, let's talk about our animal friends. And unless you've done something differently, you do not have a pet. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. I do not either, but we love animals. I don't know why I always ask you that. I just do. I just assumed you would have a little dog or cat, but you're probably always at work and don't want to leave him or her home all day. Okay, our animal friends. I thought this was really cool about breed-specific subscription pet food services. So if I have let's say a Whippet or a German Shepherd, that I would get food specifically catered to that type of dog. I think that's cool.
You know, there's so many changes for pets now. Pets have become such a part of the family that everybody's trying to satisfy all interests. I found it interesting that cats and dogs are dining on pet food with insect-based protein, fly larvae that are fed food waste, and crickets. And also they're eating ancient grains just like we are, for example, quinoa, millet, and buckwheat. And they're also eating plant-based ingredients like kale, blueberries, and spinach. So, the pet bowls will automatically reorder food. That's kind of a swell idea. Mm-hmm. But really, it's just convenience for not only the pet, but for the owner as well. More on that, too, in terms of treats for the pets. I'm seeing crates that will play soothing music, end tables that double as pet beds, and, of course, pets are going out and kayaking, running, and hiking with special gear designed for them with their owners. So,
this is so cute.
It's a dog's life after all.
I love this. Now, you kind of just breezed over it, but I wanted to return to this hay sport. More than ever, we're working out, exercising alongside our pets, kayaking with canine life vests featuring top-mounted handles for owners to grab in case of emergency. Also running leashes that cinch around waists for hands-free exercise. And this is too cute. You've even got a picture of it in the Almanac. Hiking with boots on dogs that protect paws and provide traction. And that dog looks pretty happy to have those boots on, by the way. So it's a fashionista dog.
And it's ahead of it. It's running ahead of its owner, so it must be working.
Yes, he looks like the dog's smiling in that picture. Okay, let's go over to page 20, and let's talk about our health in 2022 as we are flipping through the Old Farmer's Almanac and talking about trends coming up in this next year.
Something we're seeing, too, is people are practicing circadian eating, that is, eating in the daylight and stopping after dark. We're wearing blue light blocking glasses at night because, of course, the computer screens, whether it's phone or laptop, for example, are starting to really wear on people. And we're wearing sleepwear that adjusts its temperature to body temperature, I guess, and also room temperature. So lots of things going on. I love this one, too. Doctors are writing prescriptions for produce redeemable at farmers markets, all in the effort to get people to be healthy, eat healthy, and generally be better off.
I love the quote up top. It says, and this is a man named Skylar Hubler, a cultural strategist. He said, "The food as medicine approach will topple our reliance on pharmaceuticals. Doctor and farmer collaborations will have us trading pills for produce." Amen to that. Okay, around the house in 2022 on page 22. What will our homes look like?
Oh, we're seeing changes here again. Underutilized walk-in closets are being converted to workout spaces, offices, and guest rooms. Greenhouses are becoming dining rooms. We're seeing home office options change, refitted garden sheds becoming offices, We're seeing leased pods on lawns, that is, those boxes that become offices. We're seeing freestanding buildings with French doors and covered porches. More and more homes are getting electric car docking stations so they can plug in and power up. We're seeing, and this I haven't seen for myself, I'm puzzled by it though, windows made of transparent wood, which is safer during extreme. Yes, it's safer during extreme winds, being non-shattering and more efficient than glass. So those are just a few of the changes. We're seeing colors that will be in bathrooms. We're seeing pale blues and golden yellows. Living rooms are going with teals and light grays. Kitchens are seeing green marble countertops and bright blue cabinets.
All right. We will wrap up this segment with our fashion advice from the Old Farmer's Almanac. Actually, it's kind of a prediction of what will be happening in the coming year. On page 30, Janice, what will we be wearing?
Wow. Well, one of the biggest changes in fashion is going to be recycling of clothes. We're seeing stores buy back secondhand apparel. Retailing will become the fastest growing segment of Canadian retail apparel market. Clothing brands are offering take-back programs. Customers return items to be cleaned, repaired, and resold in-store or online. You know, what we'll also be seeing is jeans, otherwise known as dungarees, will be made into housing insulation.
Cool.
And shoes will be made out of soda bottles. We're going to be seeing, quote-unquote, leather clothing and shoes made from mushroom roots, naturally dyed sneakers, and technology that identifies fabric so that it can be recycled before ending up in the landfill. So lots going on in fashion. It's really more about what it's being made of and how it's being reused than it is really what it looks like or what the colors are this year.
All right. Well, that is Janice Stillman, and I am David Warren talking by phone with her. She is the editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac. And when we come back on today's program, we'll give you this winter's and next summer's for 2022, the forecasts for our various listening areas. Now, I've said it year after year, the Old Farmer's Almanac boasts of an 80% accuracy rate with its weather forecasting. Janice and I will talk about that after this.
I'm Karen Jensen Salisbury, one of the hosts you hear on the Oasis Network Roadshow. For 35 years, this 1 hour of the day has inspired and motivated you, our listeners, with thousands of stories of people whose lives demonstrate the truth that, with God, all things are possible. It's an hour that you should make a part of your day, Monday through Friday, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central. The Roadshow, an Oasis Network presentation.
One of my favorite people is with me today. Her name is Janice Stillman, the editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac. And yes, we cut up between segments just like we do on air. Janice, you are such a delight. I can see why the people love you there at the Old Farmer's Almanac. Tell us about your team. I can't picture how many people would work there in the Big Red Barn. Tell us about your team.
The staff of the Almanac is only a portion of the employee staff here in Dublin. So I've got two senior editors. One woman works on various parts of the Almanac and also the Old Farmer's Almanac for Kids, brand new edition out this year, by the way. And another woman handles all of the calendars, including the calendar pages in the Almanac. We've got an assistant editor. Actually, we've got a new fellow starting in a few weeks, and he's going to be contributing to the tabular pages, which are the charts, and also writing some material and possibly doing some social media, as well as contributing to the garden guide, which comes out every year in February. We've got an art director, of course. We've got she does all the layouts, I should point that out. She's the most creative person I've ever worked with, and she's just got a really lovely style, and it's reflected on every page. We've got a managing editor who is also our copy editor, and of course he makes sure that the punctuation and grammar is all correct and manages the flow of the various pages through the production process. We've got production people on the third floor, and of course they lay out the book and do all the electronics and make sure it's ready to send. And of course we don't use that much paper anymore, which is a bit of a gift. The final paper is really what it's printed on. And then we've got administration and salespeople, and then the other end of the building is the Yankee Magazine staff, and they've got many of the same types of positions that we have here at the Almanac. So it's a big group, but we all know each other, and we see each other on a regular basis going through the hall and lunchroom and whatnot.
And if I may ask, how many do you print a year? That's a lot of almanacs.
Yes, thanks for asking. We print and distribute about 2.5 million copies. And that's the various versions that we talked about earlier, as well as about 500,000 copies of our Canadian edition, and it's distributed exclusively in Canada.
Okay, well, one of the mainstays of the Old Farmer's Almanac are the calendar pages. Every year, the OFA does an astronomical look at that particular year, such as sunrises and sunsets, as well as the moon and ocean tides, plus the planets that will be visible in that particular year, in this case for 2022. So that's a lot of science-sounding information, Janice. How will all that information help me as a farmer?
Well, as a farmer, you can find your rise and set times and also turn to the back of the book and get your planting by the moon phases times as well for whatever you're going to plant above ground or below ground, whether it's flowers or edibles. But I wanted to point out, too, to some folks who may not be familiar, every month of the Old Farmer's Almanac calendar pages has a paragraph called Sky Watch. And in there you'll find out what you can see that month in the sky, whether it's the planets or the conjunctions or the moon phases, and where to look and when to look exactly. And I just want to point out that this month, not even 22, but November 21 and December 21, will be an ideal time to look up into the sky naked eye and see Venus. It will be a magnitude minus 4.33, which is extremely bright. So make sure you take a look at that. In 2022, we've got 2 visible eclipses, something to keep an eye out for, one in May and one in November. And we've got a story separate from the calendar pages on the North Star Polaris, how to find it, what it can tell you, and the stories behind it, and how it moves across the sky. Or, in fact, doesn't move. It's the one star that doesn't move, but how we move around it. So astronomy is really a core aspect of the Old Farmer's Almanac, and whether it's astronomy clubs across the country or just amateur astronomers or newbies who just want to sort of go out and take a look on a clear night and just enjoy the universe, it's a great opportunity to find out what you're looking at.
And if you're ever asked this question in a quiz show, let's say, what does the word almanac mean, Janice?
Well, thank you. Almanac means calendar of the heavens, because it really is, first and foremost, a way to break the year down to all the movements in the sky. And again, that's the rise and set of the sun and moon, the length of day, and we count that down in 365 or 66, depending on the leap year or not. But every day is counted down through the minutes, through the Old Farmer's Almanac every year, 14 months, in fact, so you get November, December of the current year, plus the full next year in calendar pages.
Okay, before we give the weather forecasts for 2022, tell us once again how a magazine can predict the weather so many months in advance and have an 80% accuracy rate. How do you do it?
Well, we have a wonderful meteorologist. It's his secret, really. He's been doing this since 1995. His name is Michael Steinberg, and he is a dedicated long-range meteorologist. In fact, sometimes we'll ask him, so Mike, what's happening in the next couple of weeks? And he says, it's not really what I predict. He says, I can give you next year, but I can't really give you next week.
Thanks a lot.
But he uses 3 scientific disciplines. He uses solar science, which is a study of the activity on the sun, but in particular sunspots. He uses climatology, which is a look back in time to see what the sunspots were like decades and centuries ago, and to see how that was reflected back on Earth. And he uses meteorology, which is a study of the atmosphere and the jet stream and the ocean temperatures, land temperatures, and a number of other factors, really more like we hear on the 6 and 11 o'clock news, so to speak. So it's science that has really been adapted and used since the very first Old Farmer's Almanac. But, of course, today we use the latest scientific data and information, satellite data, things that are available to other folks as well. But it's the way we interpret it and look at it and really plan it, forecast the details that makes the difference.
Well, last year's accuracy rate for predicting temperatures was 72%. It's the same as it was the previous year. For precipitation, it was 78% accurate, down from 89%, but the overall accuracy rate remains high at 75%. So congratulations, Michael Steinberg.
Yes, he's won it again, so to speak, yes. He does a great job. And we recognize that we're not going to be 80% every year, and we're not going to be 100% most of the time. But, when it matters, we hope that we're accurate. whether it's when you're going to have an event or go on vacation or there's a storm coming or, there's just a trend in the weather that we may have given you a little bit of a heads up on. That's the important thing.
All right, it's time for our weather predictions for 2021 into 2022. Tell us about this winter. What can we expect overall in the country, Janice?
Well, overall, we're seeing a cold, old-fashioned winter, so to speak. We're seeing a season of shivers, really almost from the middle of the country eastward, with a variety of conditions, whether it be snowy through the middle of the country and up through the Ohio Valley, cold and wet to the south, or cold and dry to the north, and certainly on the coast. The East Coast will be cold and snowy in the Boston, New York area, cold and dry in many other parts of the East Coast area. And on the west of the Rockies, it'll be cold and dry. When I say dry, I don't mean no snow or no rain. It really means below normal precipitation and snowfall. So there will be snow wherever snow typically falls. Unfortunately, there will not be a lot of snow on the West Coast where they could really use it, where they're experiencing the fires and drought. We're predicting mild and relatively dry conditions. There will be some precipitation, but we're not predicting the snows in the mountains that they really need.
All right, here is the forecast for our Oasis FM listening areas. For Tulsa and Oklahoma City, cold and dry. For our Missouri listeners, cold and snowy. For Ohio, cold and dry. And for Virginia, cold and dry. Okay, looking forward to summer 2022. What will it be like, Janice?
I just want to say be careful what you wish for. So if you're looking forward to it, it will be hot across most of the country in the same way it's going to be cold through the winter. That's our prediction. However, the difference is where it's hot and wet and where it's hot and dry. The East Coast, for the most part, except New England, will be very hot and dry. That's below normal precipitation and above normal temperatures. Up in the Northeast here in New England, we're predicting cool, rainy conditions. Still warm enough to grow tomatoes, though, I just want to tell folks. Most of the center of the country and over across the Rockies and most of the West Coast will be hot and rainy. So again, that means above normal temperatures and above normal precipitation. The Southwest will be hot and dry, and the North Midwest will be hot and dry, sort of east of the Rockies, and cool and rainy in the Minnesota and Wisconsin, upper Michigan areas. So the only place it'll be cool and dry will really be east of the Appalachians in the Ohio Valley area. So more or less it's going to be a pretty hot summer next year.
Okay, well, here's the forecast for our Oasis FM listening areas. For Tulsa and Oklahoma City, hot and rainy for summer of 2022. Also for our Missouri listeners, hot and rainy. For our Ohio listeners, hot and rainy. And for Virginians listening today, hot and dry is what you can expect in summer of 2022. I'm David Warren, and my special guest on today's program is the editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac, Janice Stillman. After the break, we'll announce this year's winners of the annual recipe and essay contests. Back after this. I'm David Warren, Program Director at Oasis Radio Network and one of the hosts of this podcast. All of our hosts enjoy hearing from you, our listening family, so drop us a note. Our email address is roadshow@oasisnetwork.org. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and you'll receive new episodes on your mobile devices. And now, back to the show. We're talking about the Old Farmer's Almanac today on the Roadshow. I'm David Warren, your host, and this is an annual tradition that I always look forward to. Janice Stillman is back with us once again. She is the current editor. She's the 13th since 1792. And she's also the first female, as I have mentioned. Okay, almanac.com is the website, and then the Almanac is anywhere books are sold, would you say, Janice?
You bet. Wherever books and magazines are sold, as well as on Amazon and at almanac.com.
And I love that people can even call 1-800-ALMANAC. Now, something I read on the back of my Amazon-ordered almanac is something that you all do called Extra. And I don't think we've ever talked about Extra. What is that?
Oh, thanks for mentioning. Yes, it's an e-magazine, an electronic magazine. It's delivered to folks like an email. And it's something that comes out every month. It's got a section on gardening and lifestyle, calendar, could be history or amusement, recipes, got 3 recipes in every issue, seasonal recipes, comes out every month. Like I say, it's available 2 weeks before the month. And you subscribe to it through a number of channels, and you go to almanac.com to find it.
Just look for Extra. Okay. This year's winning recipes were based on the challenge of using 5 or fewer ingredients, not including salt and pepper. So I guess that could be 7, literally, but take out salt and pepper, and you can use up to 5 ingredients. And you wouldn't think that you'd get that many fancy dishes, but the readers are very creative. Janice, tell us about the winners.
This is amazing. I really had my doubts about how this was going to go, but the recipe's always a challenge. We got hundreds of recipes again. The winner, though, the first prize, $300 winner, is apricot sriracha glazed baby back ribs. And there's a photo here, a full-page photo, and I'm telling you, you could eat the paper. They look delicious.
Okay, the second prize, remember this is 5 ingredients or less, easy latte truffles. Easy latte truffles.
And the ingredients, for example, are white chocolate chips, heavy whipped cream, instant coffee granules, and milk chocolate melting wafers. So if that doesn't sound delicious after the baby back ribs, I don't know what does. They also look beautiful here.
And you can start your day with the third prize winner, pesto ricotta with asparagus on toast. Well, that sounds like 4 out of the 5 ingredients right there in the title.
You're right.
Tell us about...
And that also looks delicious.
It does look... I would order that for sure. Tell us about the recipe contest for 2022.
Well, as always, rather like the 5 ingredients or less, we identify the topic, and this year coming up is going to be bananas. So send us your recipes using bananas, but please do not send us banana bread recipes. You may have the best one. It may be a prize winner elsewhere. It may be the one that your family loves and friends rave about, but we've all got lots of banana bread recipes, and we really just want to see some fresh new ideas about how to use bananas. So you may win cash prizes, $100, $200, and $300.
Okay, the time has come for something we do every year together, Janice Stillman and yours truly, David Warren. We like to read the essay contest winners. Janice reads the first prize, and I read runner-up. And this was all about a kindness I will always remember. And the winning essay came from Susan Yarrington from Pukowski, Minnesota, something like that. If you would, read the first prize winner, Janice.
This was a delight. Every one of these was a winner, but of course we can only pick one. And here we go. When I was in 2nd grade in the late 1950s, the school principal's wife invited me to her home for an afternoon. My mother had passed away the year before, so I welcomed the extra attention. Soon after I stepped into her cheery kitchen, she suggested that we play beauty shop. I stood on my tiptoes, my head bent over her gleaming sink, as she washed my hair with her very special shampoo. Then, while I sat perched on a stool with a fluffy towel wrapped around my head, she polished my fingernails and rubbed my hands and arms with a creamy lotion that smelled of lilacs. After she rinsed my hair one more time, we sat on her front porch swing, enjoying cookies and milk, my feet dangling while my hair dried in the sun. I felt like a princess that afternoon as she carefully combed and styled my hair. Many years later, I found out that the very special shampoo was a treatment for head lice, but this kind and compassionate woman spared me the stigma and embarrassment by never letting on that I was anything but a princess in need of a little pampering.
That's so sweet. Okay,
I love that story.
I do too, and I love the story that came in second from Monica Clark of New Orleans, Louisiana. And she wrote, "My youngest son died in a car accident on December 25th, 1998. In the hospital, I made the decision to donate his organs so that others could be helped by our tragedy. It was my experience with the donor agency that the survivors were celebrated, not the donors. A few years later, I was sitting in an airport when I struck up a conversation with an attractive, much younger man. The conversation flowed easily between us as we were waiting for our flights. He mentioned that he was the recipient of a donor kidney. When I shared with him my son's story, he leaned in, stood me up, looked me in the eyes, and said, 'I never thanked the person who donated their kidney to me, so I want to thank you and your son with all of my heart.' He gave me the warmest, sweetest hug that lasted long enough so that we were both in tears when we separated. It was one of the most magical moments in my life and replaced all of the negativity that I was feeling toward the organ donation agency. We then said goodbye and boarded our flights. Lovely, lovely, Janice.
Oh, they're wonderful. And there were so many of these, and so many of them brought us to near tears. It really was a terrific concept, so I'm glad we ran it. The kindness I will always remember. The next contest is equally interesting, maybe not as sensitive, but it's my most memorable wildlife experience. So we'd love to hear stories from folks in your listenership and from around the country, but send us your story, 200 words or less. If there's a bit of humor to it, so much the better, but tell us a great story about your most memorable wildlife experience.
Some of the many articles from the new 2022 edition include The Tooth, The Whole Tooth, and Nothing But the Tooth. It's about teeth. Making Sense Out of the Seasons, and that's SCENTS. Fine-Tune Your Family Tree. The Art and Science of Animal Tracking. And my favorite article, The Star-Spangled School Project. Janice, what's your favorite article in the 2022 edition of the Old Farmer's Almanac?
Oh, it is hard to pick a favorite, I have to admit. But I love, of course, learning about plants. So the story on dahlias is very interesting to me, and that we name a number of kinds. There's so many shapes and colors and sizes. We do tell people how to grow them and how to lift them at the end of season if you're in the cold season. They're fireworks in the garden is the way they're described. And there's a great story on heirloom pumpkins. Of course, those bumpy ones, the really oddly shaped pumpkins that you often see at the farmer's market, there seem to be such a puzzle as to how to grow them at home, but we give you special advice on how to do exactly that. Fishing phenology, anything that has to do with nature. When plants and shrubs are in bloom, what fish will be biting, when's a good time to go out and try to catch them. And, of course, there's always a story on weather, or most of the time anyway, and we've got one on hail. I don't want to start a rumor here, but it looks like hail is getting bigger. They're calling it gargantuan-size hail now. And while the storms may not be more frequent, the hail seems to be getting bigger, so keep an eye out. Just the bearer of the news here, not trying to scare anybody.
Okay.
But it's the nature of the news.
Janice, we've had a great time once again this year, and congratulations on another edition. You have released the 230th edition now as the 13th editor, so hats off from the Roadshow to you.
Well, thanks very much, and thanks to all your listeners for their enthusiasm for the Old Farmer's Almanac year after year. It's really terrific to know that you're out there and enjoying what we do, and we'd love to hear from you, good, bad, or indifferent, so keep in touch. And
how should we do so?
Oh, certainly reach out through almanac.com. We've got various channels there. You can hit the red button or go to so many of the pages anyway and send a comment. You can actually mail us. Just write it to the Old Farmer's Almanac, Dublin, New Hampshire. They'll find us. Or you can certainly give us a call. If you've got a few minutes, we'd be happy to chat with you. It happens occasionally. There's so many ways to reach out. Meet us on Facebook. Lots of ways to ask questions or just say hello on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, and Twitter. I mean, we really try to be wherever people are these days. And, I think Robert B. Thomas would be proud to know that we've expanded his 46-page publication to a small empire.
Yes, he would. As am I. Thank you, Janice.
Terrific to talk to you.
I'm David Warren, and I'll be back after this final break to read my favorite article, The Star-Spangled School Project. Now, most of you know that Betsy Ross designed the original American flag, 13 stars for 13 colonies, but do you know who designed our current 50-star flag? Well, I'll tell you his interesting story after this.
The Road Show is a listener favorite, which airs each weekday here on the Oasis Radio Network, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central. The Road Show also has a great section on our website, oasisnetwork.org. There you'll find audio archives of select past interviews, plus guest lineup, and contact information and links to our Roadshow sponsors and its hosts. So join us for the Roadshow, whether on your radio or on your computer at oasisnetwork.org.
Welcome back, everybody, to the final segment of the Almanac Roadshow. I'm David Warren, and what a delight it was to have once again with us Janice Stillman, the editor at the Old Farmer's Almanac. Well, joining me now on our final segment is someone, and this is something that has become a tradition now on this program. It's our sound man, Tim Maroney. You hear us say, "Hey, Tim," across the console from time to time on the road show. But he's been here 27 years and has recorded Janice and me, and before that, Judd Hale and me, all these years of the Almanac program. So welcome to the program this year.
Thank you, David Warren.
Okay, so instead of me reading some of the jokes from the back, I thought you and I could read kind of like we did in elementary school back when we took turns reading. You know, one person would read, then the next person, and the next person. So I'm going to read a little, Tim's going to read a little, and then I'll wrap it up here. But I want to read, as I mentioned before, my favorite article from the 2022 edition of the Old Farmer's Almanac, and it's called The Star-Spangled School Project. And it says, "Who designed the American flag? Betsy Ross, of course, when the country consisted of 13 states. But who created the current version, the one with a star for each of the 50 states? A high school student did. Born in 1941, 17-year-old Robert Heft of Lancaster, Ohio, learned from the news in 1958 that Alaska and Hawaii might be admitted to the Union as states. Later, when his history teacher, Stanley Pratt, required students to come up with a project, Heft had a bold idea. He took the 48-star U.S. flag given to his parents as a wedding gift and considered how to artfully add 2 stars. Inspired, he pedaled his bike to a downtown department store and purchased almost $3 worth of blue cotton broadcloth. His breakthrough design idea was to insert the 2 stars by arranging all 50 stars in 5 rows of 6 alternating with 4 rows of 5. One problem: Heft was no seamstress. "I had never sewn in my life," he said. He asked his grandmother to help, but she angrily rebuffed him, saying that he was desecrating the flag. So he did it all on his own. Crouching down on the floor of the family living room, he traced the white stars on cardboard before cutting them out. He did the best he could with a foot-operated Singer sewing machine. It took him 12 hours over a weekend to arrange and sew the new pattern of stars. However, Mr. Pratt was not impressed. He gave Heft a B-, and Heft was miffed. With a stern smile, Pratt told Heft that he would give him a better grade if the U.S. Congress ever accepted his design.
Undaunted, Heft pedaled to the nearby home of his congressman, Walter Moeller, explained what he had done, and left the flag with him. The following year, the congressman called Heft and told him some incredible news. More than 1,500 flag designs had been submitted to a special committee for a new flag. Many of them proposed alternating rows of 5 and 6 stars. 3 designs were identical to Heft's, but the persistent perfectionist teenager was the only one to stitch together a model flag. President Eisenhower had been given 5 finalists, and he had chosen Heft's design. Eisenhower later called Heft at work to invite him to the official raising of the flag. The young man actually put the president on hold to see if his boss would give him time off. "Yes, you can go," he was told. On July 4th, 1960, Heft was part of the festive ceremonies at Fort McHenry in Maryland, whose bombardment by the British had inspired the writing of the Star-Spangled Banner. This was gratifying for Heft, but not as satisfying as his return to his old high school, where his taskmaster Pratt gladly changed his grade to an A.
For years after, Heft traveled the world with his handmade flag, recounting his saga. "He was the greatest patriot I ever knew," said his friend Will Houghton. Heft visited all of the states and nearly 60 nations. He traveled to the White House as an invited guest more than a dozen times, flew on Air Force One, toured with celebrities, and appeared on TV shows. His original flag flew over every state capital and 88 U.S. embassies. He once declined an offer of $250,000 for it. He had it insured for $1 million. Well, Heft died in 2009, allegedly in possession of the copyright for a design for a 51-star flag. His grandnephews and nieces inherited the one that he had made in high school. And that's the article, The Star-Spangled School Project, written by Jay Kopp. And Tim, I did not know that you were such a good reader. We'll have to do this more often on the Roadshow.
Well, thank you, David.
Thank you, Tim. And again, a big thanks to Janice Stillman, our guest today. And thank you, listening family, for tuning in today and for, 35 years now here at the Oasis Radio Network. Well, for Tim, for Janice, I'm David Warren. It's been another great Roadshow. You've been listening to The Roadshow. If you'd like to write to us, here's our address. The Roadshow, P.O. Box 1924, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 74101. Our email address is roadshow@oasisnetwork.org. The views of today's guest aren't necessarily those of this station, but we do appreciate and thank our guest for spending this time with us. The Roadshow, an Oasis Network presentation.